After receiving a wave of complaints about her restaurant, a black female CEO went undercover as a customer to see the truth for herself. What she found shocked her. Staff immediately brushed her off without a second glance. Then, in the back alley, she overheard them mocking black diners. She didn't lose her temper. Instead, she called an emergency staff meeting, one that would make every employee regret what they'd done. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your voice. Janelle Rhodes pushed open the heavy glass door of Pearl's table just before noon. A dusty wind chime clinked above her head, off-key and tired. No one looked up to greet her. The place wasn't crowded, but it wasn't quiet either. Loud pop music pulsed from a grimy speaker near the counter, drowning out the clatter of utensils and voices. Everywhere she looked, there were signs of carelessness. A server with pink hair leaned against the wall, eyes glued to her phone, thumbs flying. Another girl, hair messy and gum popping between her teeth, passed by carrying an empty tray past a table still covered in crumbs and crumpled napkins. Behind the counter, a young man, probably new, tapped his knuckles rhythmically and hummed something off-key, paying no mind to Janelle. The restaurant felt looser somehow, sloppier. Chairs sat uneven and crooked, napkins hung off the plates, some dropped to the floor. One ceiling fan spun lazily, stirring warm air around, while its twin sat still and caked with dust. A stack of high chairs stood awkwardly in the aisle like someone had given up midway through cleaning. Janelle stepped closer to the counter. She waited for a glance, a nod, any sign of recognition. None came. The pink-hamed girl stayed lost in her phone. The busboy moved past her without so much as a glance. She chose a seat near the window. From there she could see others waiting too. A woman down the bar, black, elderly, elegant in a pressed wool coat, held her menu patiently. Her water glass sat bone dry. She had clearly been waiting a long time. Across the room, another black couple sat in silence, the man tapping his finger softly against the table, frustration in his eyes. From the back, a voice called out lazily, "Be right with you, sweetheart," but no one came. Janelle's eyes narrowed. Two young white women walked in after her. Within seconds, a smiling server approached their table. She laughed, leaned in close, adjusted every fork and cup with care. They got service before anyone else. Finally, another server drifted by Janelle's side of the bar. She didn't stop, just tossed over her shoulder, "Hang tight, hun," and disappeared behind the counter, slowly polishing glasses like there was no one else in the room. Janelle waited 5 more minutes. She cleared her throat gently. She set the menu down with a soft tap. Nothing. She opened her mouth to speak, but something in their blank expressions stopped her. That look of casual dismissal. She exhaled, barely audible. Not anger, yet. Just a weight pressing down from the inside. Her eyes landed on a small plaque by the napkin holder. A new logo, sleeker. Same name though, Pearl's Table. Nobody here seemed to remember what that name used to mean. Warmth, attention, food made with real care. She stood without ordering. No one noticed her leave. The pink-maid girl scrolled on. The cashier kept drumming. The server kept polishing. Instead of heading for the exit, Janelle turned left, down the narrow hall past the restrooms, toward the back door that opened to the alley. A hot breeze of grease and stale fryer oil hit her face. The alley behind the restaurant was just as she remembered. Grimy, cluttered with cardboard boxes, the concrete streaked with oil. The air held the stale smell of cigarettes and summer. She moved toward a faded wooden door tucked behind a crooked utility shelf. No sign on it. Most people didn't know it existed. Her mother had called it the breathing door. When things got too busy, too loud, Pearl would step out here, close her eyes for 5 minutes, and breathe. "You can't cook angry," she used to say. "You need somewhere to put your hurt before you pick up the ladle." Janelle reached for the handle. It was still cold, like no one had touched it in weeks. Janelle stood still just beyond the old kitchen door, her body frozen like her breath had caught midair. From her hiding spot in the narrow alley behind the restaurant, she could hear everything inside. The smell of frying oil clung to the edges of her coat and mingled with the damp heat that hung in the air. She still found herself asking, how had a place once so rooted in kindness become this indifferent? Zion's voice came first, casual, cocky, unfiltered. He was one of the younger cooks, less than 6 months into the job. "You see that old lady sitting by the window?" he said, laughing under his breath. "Swear to God, these grannies come in just to nitpick. Bet she's already drafting a 4-paragraph Yelp review. And that black guy tapping the table like he owns the damn place, what's he expecting, 5-star service?" A soft scoff followed. Lene, the cashier. "At least she's not snapping her fingers like that dude last week, and honestly, why do they just sit there like that, knowing no one's gonna serve them?" Her gum popped, sharp and smug. "Oh, and by the way," she added, "I heard the new boss is a woman. Figures, probably all emotions and no fire. Not like Andre's old boss." There was a pause, brief but heavy. Janelle felt a chill roll down her spine, not from the air, but from the brazenness of their words. Then came a gravelly voice, slower and grounded. Andre, the head cook. He'd been there the longest, back when her mother still ran the place. "Any of you ever peel 40 pounds of carrots for a winter soup kitchen? Bare hands, no gloves." "In a snowstorm," he said. "I have. That was her." Silence fell. This time it was different. Less indifferent, more stunned. Maybe even tinged with shame. Andre's voice softened, just barely. Pearl raised her right. "You all just forgot what grace looks like." Then, sharper, came another voice, probably Marcus, one of the line cooks always complaining about shifts. "Here he goes again, singing the old owner's praises. Scared you'll get canned if you don't kiss up to the new one, Andre." Zion chuckled. "Come on, man. It's just business now. Sentiment doesn't pay bills, or hey, maybe you want a manager's badge." Andre didn't respond, just the sound of a knife hitting the cutting board, harder now. A pan clattered to the floor somewhere, loud and jarring. No one spoke after that. As the voices in the kitchen finally quieted, reaching a simmer after the boil, Janelle gently pushed open the door and stepped inside. She moved like memory, silent and intentional. The kitchen was brighter than she remembered, but colder too. The industrial lights above buzzed low and constant, indifferent. She passed neatly labeled spice jars, worn cutting boards, and paused at a familiar corner, wedged between the sink and a dry storage rack. It wasn't the prettiest spot, but from here her mother used to see everything. The old stool was still there. She pulled it out slowly and sat. Janelle said nothing. She reached for a clean rag from the drawer, wet it under the icy tap, and began wiping down the greasy edge of the prep counter. She scrubbed in small, steady circles. Her hand swept across dried oil, lingering fingerprints, and a faint nick in the stone. A scar left behind where Pearl once slipped while slicing onions. It wasn't just a scratch. It was a mark of effort, of care. She didn't cry, but something tightened around her throat, like the ache you get before a storm breaks. It wasn't just what they said. It was that none of them, not a single one, thought she could hear them. And that told her everything she needed to know. Janelle sat still, listening to the noise inside her own head, the churn of thoughts, emotions, decisions lining up like dominoes. She had seen the chaos, the lack of care, the cold indifference. She had heard the disrespect, not just toward the customers, but toward everything this place once stood for. And it was clear now, something had to change. But not through yelling. Not through anger. She needed a different approach. One that would force them to see the truth for themselves and choose. It was time. After a long moment of stillness, Janelle stood up. She walked out of the kitchen and looked for Andre. He was at the prep counter, quietly slicing onions, face tight with tension. At the front, Lene was back at the register, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Janelle walked right up to Andre. "Mr. Andrea," she said, her voice calm but firm. He flinched and looked up. His eyes were tired but instantly flickered with shock. Just moments ago he'd defended her name. But now she was standing in front of him, real, present, undeniable, like something he'd willed into existence by speaking it aloud. "Monsieur Janelle," he gasped. How long have you been here? I didn't know, I didn't think." Janelle nodded, her eyes holding his. "I'm Janelle Rhodes, the new owner of Pearl's Table. I've been here since this morning, and I heard everything." Lani's head jerked up from her phone. She stared, eyes darting between Janelle and Andre. Her casual smirk vanished. Something serious was happening. She could feel it. "I need a meeting," Janelle said. "All staff, in the kitchen, now. Mr. Andre, would you help me gather everyone?" Andre nodded, his initial shock giving way to quiet respect. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, voice steady. Then he turned and called out loudly, "Zion, Marcus, Lene, everybody in the kitchen, now." The weight in his voice left no room for argument. One by one they trickled in, Zion, Marcus, and finally Lene, reluctant and silent. They all stared at Janelle as she stood at the center of the kitchen, holding a tablet and a stylus. Something in Andre's posture, the way he stood behind her, told them this wasn't a guest. This was the one they had been talking about. Janelle didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold. Her tone was so calm it made the air feel heavier. "Good morning," she began, meeting each pair of eyes in the room. "I'm Janelle Rhodes, the new owner of Pearl's Table. Some of you may remember me from when my mother was here. For others, this is our first real meeting." She took a slow breath. Her voice never wavered, but there was disappointment beneath every word. "I spent this morning watching. I saw a lot. Dirty tables, empty glasses, customers waiting and waiting. I saw indifference. I saw a lack of care, not just for the work, but for the people we serve." She didn't call out Zion or Lene by name. She didn't need to. Her words landed exactly where they were meant to. "I also heard things. Unprofessional comments, disrespect, toward our guests, and toward this restaurant's legacy. Pearl's Table wasn't built on gossip and shortcuts. My mother built this place with love and hands-on service." She paused. "No one's at fault for thinking I wasn't here," she said. "That's on me. I let this place run without real leadership. I should have stepped in sooner. That's my responsibility." She lifted the tablet. "I'm not here to preach or to punish, but I do believe everyone deserves a choice. In the next few days," she continued, "you'll each receive a personal email from me. Inside will be a proposal, not a contract, but a commitment, a choice to start over, to rebuild the kind of service and care this place was known for. Together. The proposal will include new roles, clear expectations, and fair compensation. If you're ready to move forward with me, all you need to do is sign. No blind loyalty, no empty promises, just honesty and willingness." She let the silence settle again. "And if this no longer feels like the right fit for you," she added gently, "that's okay too. The email will include a simple form. You can fill it out to request an exit. We'll handle each case respectfully. You'll receive 2 weeks' pay and a proper reference letter. No shame, just choice." No one moved. Andre stepped forward first. He didn't say a word. He placed a weathered hand on the counter, solid, steady, and gave a slow nod. Not to her, but to something deeper than words, to history, to respect, to legacy. Lene looked around, eyes suddenly glassy. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stood still, listening to something inside herself, something shifting. Zion folded his arms, gave a little shrug. "If you're turning this place into a mission camp," he muttered, "I'm probably not your guy." Nobody responded. Janelle didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She just nodded as if to say, "I hear you. That's your choice." No chairs scraped, no one stormed out. But the line had been drawn, not with threats, but with clarity. And for the first time in years, Pearl's Table was quiet. In the right way. Not because of boredom, not because of burnout, but because every person in that kitchen was finally facing something real and choosing. After the tense, pivotal staff meeting, the atmosphere at Pearl's Table still carried the weight of what had been said. Andre had nodded his acceptance, his eyes filled with quiet resolve. Lene remained unsettled, but something in Janelle's words had clearly struck her. And Zion? Zion was still defiant, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Janelle understood. Real change wouldn't happen in a day. This was only the beginning. The real test would be whether her words could turn into action. That afternoon, usually the busiest time at Pearl's table, brought its usual flow of guests. But the warmth that used to fill the space felt thinner, like something sacred had been disturbed. Janelle sat silently behind the divider wall, watching the corners of the kitchen where Andre was now calmly showing Zion how to place utensils properly. His voice was patient but firm. Zion followed instructions half-heartedly, casting sidelong glances at Janelle, every look laced with challenge. Then the front door opened. A young black man stepped inside, wearing a worn hoodie and shoes soaked through from an earlier rain. His cheeks were hollow, but his eyes were sharp, alert, cautious. He approached the counter hesitantly, pulling a handful of coins and crumpled dollar bills from his pocket. I'd like a burger and fries, he said quickly, nervously. I've got enough. I won't stay long. Zion shot a glance at Lene, then said loud enough for the boy to hear. Another one from the group home. This place is turning into a soup kitchen. Lene, who usually would have giggled, didn't. She simply looked at Zion, frowned slightly, and turned away. That usual smirk on her face was gone, replaced with something closer to uncertainty. Andre heard it too. He set his knife down with a deliberate thud and walked out to the front counter. His voice was calm, but each word hit the air like a hammer. Back in the day, someone said the same thing when they saw me ride my bike here asking for work. I lived off cold bread for a week because nobody believed I had money. Pearl was the only one who saw me and brought sandwiches to the back sink for me to eat. Zion said nothing, head lowered, but he didn't apologize either. The boy, his name, Keon, scribbled on the red paper wristband he still wore, stood frozen, unsure whether he should sit or walk out. Lene stepped forward slowly. Her face had lost much of its earlier suspicion. She eyed the handful of small bills and coins in Keon's hand. Where'd you get the money? Why is it all ones and coins? You didn't do something, did you? Her voice was softer than before, less of an interrogation, more of a habit she hadn't yet unlearned. But the question triggered something in Keon. As she stepped a little too close, he flinched and pulled his hand back, accidentally knocking the cup of water off the tray beside him. Water splashed down his arm and soaked the cleanest part of his hoodie. The room went still. The kitchen and the counter space fell into a hush that cut through the clatter of dishes and hum of fryers. All eyes turned to the boy, his arms wet, his shoulders tense. Janelle stepped forward from the back kitchen. She didn't yell, she didn't demand explanations. She simply walked over, picked up a clean towel from the basket, and offered it to Keon. Go ahead and take a seat, she said gently. Your burger's on the way. What would you like to drink? Keon stared at her, stunned, his lips pressed together like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then, slowly, he took the towel and nodded. I'll take water, with ice, please. Zion stood behind the counter, still holding his dish rag. Then he raised his voice again, this time even louder. Who exactly are we serving now, or are we just carrying this whole city on our backs? He was looking straight at Janelle, daring her to react. But she didn't respond with words. She simply turned away from him. Quietly, but unmistakably. A rejection of his negativity without needing to say a thing. She made her way to the counter where Andre stood. He looked at her, his eyes full of calm understanding. Then he turned back to his work, preparing Keon's meal with even more care than usual. Lene lingered for a second, then sighed, grabbed some paper towels and bent down to clean the spill, more carefully this time, without complaint. And Janelle? She sliced an orange, placed a perfect wedge on the rim of Keon's ice water, and gently set it on the table in front of him. She folded another clean napkin and placed it beside his plate, an unspoken gesture of care, as if to say, "You're welcome here." That meal began more than just lunch. It marked a shift in tone, in posture, and how people looked at one another across the worn wood of Pearl's table. The change had begun, not with speeches, but with small choices. And now, everyone was watching what came next. That afternoon, Pearl's table no longer buzzed like it used to. The gentle clinking of dishes, the low hiss of the oven, and the quiet between staff created a slower, more uncertain rhythm. The air wasn't tense, but it was cautious. People were watching each other more closely, thinking about things they hadn't thought about before. An older black woman walked up to the counter, wearing a worn-out coat. Her hair was silver, her eyes sharp but kind. She held a slightly crumpled menu in her hand but didn't look at it. Instead, she looked directly at Lene. Her voice was low but clear. "I was once refused service here, just for being a black woman in an old sweater. Didn't yow. Didn't cause a scene. They just walked past me like I didn't exist." The room paused. She wasn't pointing fingers. But everyone knew the words had landed somewhere deep. The woman exhaled softly. Her gaze swept the space, resting briefly on Janelle before turning back to Lene. "I'm not here to blame. I came back because I still believe in the name Pearl's Table, and what it was, and what it could be. But please, don't be the reason someone else remembers what it feels like to be invisible in their own community." Liney stood behind the register, frozen. No apology, no defense. Just silence. Like someone had gently removed the mask she wore every day. Her eyes met the woman's. Then she bowed her head, not speaking, but understanding. At the end of the counter, Janelle still held the glass she hadn't finished washing. Her eyes scanned the room. Same worn walls, same old tables, the lights no longer shining like opening day. But within all that wear, something was quietly coming back to life. Not grandeur, but presence. Zion stepped out of the back, his coat in hand. He didn't say goodbye to anyone, but he walked straight to Janelle. The defiance in his eyes was gone, replaced with shame, hesitation, and something softer. "I don't hate this place," he said quietly. His voice no longer carried the edge it used to. I don't think I'm ready for what you're building here. I don't think I'm ready to start over. I'd like to leave, ma'am." Janelle met his gaze, steady and kind. There was no judgment, just clarity. She saw the pride still bruised in him, and she honored his choice. "I understand," she said with a nod. "If that's your decision, I respect it. You'll get full pay for the days you've worked, plus the 2 weeks I promised. And I'll write you a fair reference if you ever need one." She added warmly, "The door will still be here if you ever decide to come back." Zion nodded, quietly this time, no smirk, no challenge. Just a young man not yet whole, learning how to leave something behind. He walked out in silence, leaving behind a space that felt light, not empty, but human. Back in the kitchen, Andre sliced cucumbers with a gentler rhythm. Liney returned to the register, this time without her phone. She glanced once at the door where Zion had left, then looked toward the guests coming in, with a new kind of attentiveness. And the old woman in the worn coat? She didn't leave. She slowly made her way to an empty table, pulled out the chair and sat down. She didn't order right away. She simply set the menu down, brushed her hand across the table, and looked around the room, a thoughtful look touched by something new. She gave a small shake of her head, like letting go of an old memory. Then smiled gently. "Pearl's Table always did have the best apple pie," she whispered, just loud enough for herself to hear. A quiet affirmation of faith restored. "And Janelle?" She rinsed the glass in her hand, dried it carefully, and placed it back on the shelf. No big speech. No announcement. Because this little restaurant, slow, modest, scarred, was beginning to come alive again. Not through slogans, but through small, silent choices that meant something real. After everything that had happened, the confrontations, the choices made, the atmosphere at Pearl's Table had shifted for good. The silence wasn't apathy anymore, it was space. Space to think, space to change. That morning the restaurant was still quiet. Early sunlight spilled through the front windows, casting soft light across the worn wooden tables. Janelle stood near the menu board by the entrance, one hand holding a bottle of cleaner, the other wrapped around an old piece of cloth. A faded ivory napkin, its edges frayed but the embroidered words still clear. Pearl's Grace. It was the same napkin her mother used every morning, wiping the board, her hands, and the sweat from her brow after long hours in the kitchen. Janelle pressed her palm against the fabric and took in a slow breath. From the back kitchen, a faint scent of cinnamon drifted in, and with it, memories of her mother returned. Not loud or dramatic, but gently, steadily. She started wiping down the board with a napkin. Each stroke erased faded chalk and grease lines with careful, rhythmic motions. It wasn't just cleaning. It felt like clearing space for something new to begin. Nearby, a little girl, pigtails neatly braided, eyes wide, stood beside Lene. She pointed at the cloth in Janelle's hand, then looked up and asked, "Who's Miss Pearl?" Lene blinked at the question, surprised but not uncomfortable. She looked down at the girl and answered softly, almost in a whisper. She was the kind of woman who gave away warm pies to anyone who came in soaked from the rain, and she believed that no matter where you came from, you deserved to be treated with kindness. That answer made the room pause, not because it was grand, but because it was true, and because it came from Lene, who once would have rolled her eyes and walked away. Her tone now carried no sarcasm, only warmth, a gentle change settling into her eyes as she looked at the little girl. In the back kitchen, Keon was rinsing the morning's dishes. His hands were still a bit clumsy, water splashing here and there, but his focus was sharp. Gone was the nervous energy. Now he moved with quiet purpose, even a hint of pride. Andre stepped beside him, didn't say a word, just gave him a light pat on the shoulder, just enough for Keon to glance up and crack a small smile. The gesture was full of encouragement and recognition, no longer the tight-lipped silence it used to be. Janelle watched all of it from the doorway. No interference, no instructions. She just stood there, hands still holding the embroidered napkin. She saw Lene, once indifferent, now explaining to a child what kindness means. She saw Keon, once unsure, now finding a place that mattered, even if it was small, under Andre's quiet mentorship. The space around them, the flickering ceiling light they still hadn't fixed, the curry stains on the wall that no one had painted over, the receipt printer that jammed every other hour, suddenly felt tender. The imperfections didn't matter so much anymore, because the heart of this place had been restored. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.